There's a certain kind of connection that doesn't follow logic. It doesn't unfold in a healthy, predictable way. It doesn't give you clarity, stability, or peace in the beginning. Instead, it gives you intensity, confusion, and a feeling that you've stepped into something you don't fully understand, but somehow can't walk away from. Because no matter how hard you try to detach, something keeps pulling you back. And the most frustrating part is, you know it doesn't make sense. You know the signs. They take hours, sometimes days, to reply. They open up one moment, then completely shut down the next. They make you feel deeply seen, then suddenly emotionally invisible. It's inconsistent, unstable, emotionally exhausting, and yet it feels meaningful in a way you can't explain to anyone else. Because when it's good, it's not just good, it feels rare, like they understand you without you having to explain everything, like there's a silent emotional language between you. Like something about this connection is deeper than surface level attraction. And that's exactly what makes it so hard to let go. Because you're not just attached to a person, you're attached to the feeling you experience with them, a feeling you don't easily find anywhere else. So you stay, even when they pull away, even when they become distant, even when you tell yourself, this isn't healthy. You stay because something inside you keeps whispering, there's more to this story. And here's where it gets even more complicated. They feel it too, not in the same way you do, but in their own internal, conflicted way. Because when an avoidant connects with someone on a deep emotional level, it creates a kind of inner chaos they don't know how to handle. On one side, they feel drawn to you, safe in your presence, seen in a way they're not used to, emotionally activated in a way that feels intense and real. But on the other side, that same connection triggers fear. Fear of losing control, fear of dependency, fear of being emotionally exposed. So what do? They pull away, not because the connection is weak, but because it's too strong. This is the paradox that most people don't understand. If an avoidant doesn't care, they don't stay in your life at all. They don't keep reappearing. They don't check on you indirectly. They don't create these cycles of closeness and distance. They simply disappear for good. But when they do keep coming back, even in small, subtle ways, it means something unresolved is still there. Something unfinished, something they haven't been able to process or fully detach from. And that's why this connection starts to feel almost destined, not in a fairy tale way, but in a way that feels like, no matter what happens, we keep crossing paths again. You try to move on, you meet other people, you try to build something stable, something easier, but it doesn't feel the same. Something is missing, not because the other people are wrong, but because this connection set a different emotional standard, one that was intense, raw, and deeply activating. And then, just when you start to think you're finally letting go, they come back. Sometimes it's small. A message, asterisk, hey, how have you been? Asterisk, a reaction to something you posted. A random moment where they suddenly re-enter your space like nothing ever happened. And just like that, everything you tried to suppress comes rushing back. The feelings, the questions, the hope you thought you had buried. And you find yourself pulled right back into the same emotional loop, trying to understand, trying to decode, trying to figure out what this all means. But here's the deeper truth most people never realize. This phase, this confusing, emotionally intense beginning, is not random. If you and an avoidant are truly meant to play a significant role in each other's lives, the connection doesn't start with ease. It starts with activation. It exposes wounds. It triggers fears. It brings unresolved emotional patterns to the surface, for both of you. For you, it might awaken abandonment fears or the need for reassurance. For them, it activates their instinct to withdraw, to protect themselves, to regain emotional control. And because of that, the beginning never feels stable. It feels like something powerful is trying to form, but keeps getting interrupted, pulled apart, reset, again and again. And this is the moment where most people walk away, because they interpret the confusion as a sign that it's not meant to be. They think, if this was real, it would be easy. If they cared, they wouldn't pull away. If this was right, it wouldn't hurt this much. But that's not always true when it comes to avoidant dynamics. Because with avoidance, intensity doesn't lead to closeness immediately. It leads to distance first. And if the connection is truly significant, that distance doesn't end the story. It actually begins the next phase. A phase where separation, silence, and emotional distance start doing something unexpected. They begin to change how both of you see each other. And that's where everything slowly starts to shift in a way you won't see coming. At some point, the connection breaks. Not completely, but enough for you to feel it. The energy shifts. The closeness fades. And the person who once felt so emotionally present becomes distant, quiet, almost unreachable. This is the phase that hurts the most, because it doesn't end with a clear explanation. There's no real closure. No honest conversation that helps you understand what went wrong. Just distance. And suddenly, you're left alone with your thoughts, replaying everything, every conversation, every moment, every detail that once felt meaningful. You start asking yourself questions you can't answer. Did I do something wrong? Did I push too much? Were they ever serious about me at all? And the silence makes it worse. Because silence with an avoidant isn't empty. It's loud. It creates overthinking. It creates emotional spirals. It makes you feel like you're losing control over something you once felt so deeply connected to. But while all of this is happening to you, something equally important is happening on their side, even if you can't see it, even if they don't show it. When an avoidant pulls away, it looks like they've moved on easily, like nothing affected them, like they're completely fine without you. But that's not the full story, because what they're actually doing is regulating themselves. They're trying to calm the emotional intensity that the connection created inside them. Remember, avoidants don't disconnect because they feel nothing. They disconnect because they feel too much and don't know how to process it safely. So distance becomes their coping mechanism. It gives them a sense of control again. It helps them avoid emotional overwhelm. It allows them to convince themselves that they're independent, unaffected, and okay. But here's the part most people don't understand. Distance doesn't erase the connection for them. It just suppresses it. And suppression is temporary. Because once the emotional intensity settles, once the pressure they felt starts to fade, something unexpected begins to happen. They start thinking about you. Not constantly at first. Not in a way they would openly admit. But in small, subtle moments. A memory. A conversation. A feeling they can't fully recreate with anyone else. And slowly, the narrative inside their mind begins to shift. When they were close to you, their focus was on fear. This is too much. I'm losing control. I need space. But in distance, that fear gets replaced with reflection. They start to see things differently. They remember how safe you made them feel. How understood they felt around you. How rare that connection actually was. And this creates something uncomfortable for them. Emotional contradiction. Because now, they're not running from the connection anymore. They're quietly being pulled back toward it. But here's where it gets complicated again. Avoidants don't process emotions in a direct, linear way. They don't suddenly realize everything and come back with clarity and commitment. Instead, they hover. They think about reaching out, but hesitate. They check your social media, but don't interact. They type messages, then delete them. Because a part of them wants to reconnect. But another part is still afraid of falling back into that same emotional intensity. So they stay in between. Not fully gone. Not fully present. Just lingering. And while this is happening, you're going through your own transformation. Because distance forces you to face something you were avoiding too. Your emotional dependence on the connection. At first, it feels like loss. Like something important has been taken away from you. But over time, if you allow yourself to sit with it instead of chasing them, you start to change. You begin to see the dynamic more clearly. You begin to understand your own patterns. Why you stayed. Why you tolerated inconsistency. Why their attention felt so important to your emotional state. And this is where the shift begins. Because the connection is no longer just about them. It becomes about you, your boundaries, your self-worth, your emotional stability. And something powerful happens here. You start detaching. Not in a forced way, but naturally, slowly. You stop checking your phone as often. You stop overanalyzing every little thing. You stop waiting. And for the first time, your energy begins to pull back. And this changes everything. Because in avoidant dynamics, the moment you truly start letting go is often the moment they start feeling the loss. Not because you played a game. Not because you tried to manipulate the situation. But because the emotional dynamic has shifted. You're no longer the one holding the connection together. And now, they feel the space you left behind. And that's when something unexpected starts to happen. A shift that feels almost sudden, but has actually been building quietly beneath the surface this entire time. Just when you finally start to feel a shift within yourself. when the constant overthinking begins to quiet down, when the emotional grip they had on you starts to loosen, when you slowly begin choosing yourself again. That's when it happens. They come back, but not in the way you imagined. Not with a long apology, not with clarity, not with the emotional openness you were hoping for. Instead, it's subtle, almost confusing. A message that feels casual, like nothing ever happened. A small reaction to your story, as if the distance meant nothing. A random check-in that seems light on the surface, but carries deeper meaning underneath. And suddenly, all those feelings you worked so hard to quiet down come rushing back. Your heart reacts before your mind can catch up, and you find yourself right back in that familiar emotional space. Why now? What do they want? Does this mean something, or am I reading into it again? This is one of the most critical moments in the entire connection, because what happens next determines everything. Most people, in this phase, fall back into the same pattern. They respond quickly. They reopen emotionally. They give the same level of access they always did, hoping this time will be different. Hoping this time the avoidant will finally stay. But here's the truth you need to understand. When an avoidant comes back, it doesn't automatically mean they've changed. It means they felt the absence. It means the distance affected them. It means something inside them pulled them back toward you. But it does not guarantee emotional readiness. And that's where many people get hurt again, because they mistake reappearance for transformation. They think, they missed me, so now they understand. They came back, so now they're ready. They reached out, so now it will be consistent. But avoidants don't change just because they feel your absence. They change when they become aware of their patterns, when they start facing their fears instead of running from them. And that takes time. So when they come back without doing that inner work, the dynamic tries to repeat itself. The same closeness begins to build. The same emotional intensity starts to rise. And slowly, the same fear gets triggered again, which leads to the same outcome: distance. Again, unless you have changed. Because this phase isn't really about them proving something. It's about you responding differently. For the first time, you have a choice. Not from a place of fear, not from a place of emotional dependency, but from awareness. You can observe instead of immediately reacting. You can take your time instead of rushing back in. You can allow connection without losing yourself inside it. And this creates something completely new in the dynamic. Because avoidants are used to a certain pattern, they pull away. You chase. They feel pressured. They distance again. But when you break that pattern, when you remain calm, grounded, and emotionally self-contained, it unsettles them in a different way. Not negatively, but deeply. Because now, they're not interacting with the same version of you. They're interacting with someone who no longer feeds the cycle. Someone who isn't trying to force closeness. Someone who isn't reacting emotionally to every inconsistency. Someone who feels different, and that's when their curiosity grows. That's when they start leaning in slowly. Not because they're being pushed, but because the dynamic feels safe in a way they're not used to. And this is the turning point most people miss. Because they think the goal is to get the avoidant back. But that's not the real shift. The real shift is this: you stop needing them in the same way, and ironically, that's what allows the connection to evolve. But even here, things are not fully stable yet. Because there's still one final barrier that needs to be faced. One deeper layer of fear that avoidants don't easily confront. And until that happens, the connection will continue to feel incomplete, unfinished, like something is still being held back. And that's exactly what the next phase reveals. The moment where everything either deepens into something real or finally falls apart for good. At this stage, everything feels different. Not easier, but deeper, more real. Because now, this isn't just about attraction, confusion, or emotional highs and lows anymore. It's about truth. The kind of truth that can't be avoided, distracted from, or pushed aside. Because after all the distance, all the returning, all the emotional cycles, you both reach a point where something inside you says, this can't continue the same way anymore. And this is where the connection reaches its most intense phase. Not on the surface, but internally. Because now, both of you are being forced to confront something you've been unconsciously avoiding since the very beginning. For you, it's the fear of losing them completely. The fear that if you stop holding on, if you stop being patient, if you stop giving chances, then this connection, this rare, intense, once-in-a-lifetime feeling, will disappear for good. And that thought alone, feels unbearable, because despite everything, a part of you still believes they're the one. But at the same time, another part of you is exhausted, tired of the inconsistency, tired of the emotional confusion, tired of feeling like you're the only one truly holding the depth of this connection. And for the first time, you start asking a different question. Not, why are they like this? But, is this actually enough for me? And that question changes everything. Because now, you're no longer just focused on keeping the connection alive. You're evaluating whether it deserves to stay in your life. And on the other side, the avoidant is going through something just as intense. Even if they don't show it, even if they stay quiet, even if they act normal on the surface, internally, they feel the shift. They feel that your energy is no longer the same, that you're not as emotionally available in the same way, that something about you has become grounded, self-contained, and harder to read. And this triggers something deeper than before, not just fear of closeness, but fear of loss, because earlier, they could pull away and trust that you would still be there, that the connection would remain open, that you wouldn't fully leave. But now, that certainty is gone. And for an avoidant, this is one of the most uncomfortable emotional positions to be in, because it forces them into a space they've spent their whole life avoiding. Vulnerability without control. They can no longer rely on distance to manage the connection. They can no longer assume you'll always be waiting. They can no longer stay in that in-between space where they get connection without commitment. Now, they have to face a choice. And this is the breaking point. Not dramatic on the outside, but powerful on the inside. Because for the first time, the connection is no longer running on unconscious patterns. It's standing at a crossroads. And that crossroads asks two very simple, but very difficult questions for you. Am I willing to walk away if this doesn't become real? And for them, am I willing to risk emotional vulnerability to not lose this person? And here's the truth most people don't talk about. Not every avoidant chooses growth at this stage. Some will retreat again. Not because they don't feel, not because the connection wasn't real, but because facing their emotions at this level feels overwhelming. So they choose what feels familiar: distance, silence, avoidance. And if that happens, this is where many connections finally end. Not with anger, not with a big fight, but with a quiet realization that love without emotional availability isn't enough. And for some people, that's the closure they needed all along. But if the avoidant doesn't run this time, if they stay, if they begin to lean into the discomfort instead of escaping it, then something incredibly rare starts to happen. Something that almost never happens in the earlier stages. They begin to open, slowly, awkwardly, imperfectly, not with grand gestures, not with perfect words, but in small, meaningful ways. They start communicating more consistently. They begin to express things they used to hide. They allow themselves to stay present, even when it feels uncomfortable. And most importantly, they stop running at the first sign of emotional intensity. And this is how you know the connection is shifting into something real. Not because everything is suddenly perfect, but because both of you are now consciously choosing it. Not out of fear, not out of attachment, but out of awareness. And this phase, this exact moment, is what determines whether the connection was truly meant to evolve, or simply meant to teach you something you needed to learn. Because destiny, in connections like this, isn't about staying no matter what. It's about reaching a point where both people are finally capable of choosing each other in a healthy, grounded, and real way. And if that happens, the connection transforms into something completely different than what it was in the beginning. Something calmer, stronger, more stable. But getting there requires one final shift, one final realization that changes how you see everything that happened between you. And that's exactly what the last part reveals. After everything, the confusion, the distance, the emotional ups and downs, you reach a point where something inside you becomes clear. This connection was never about chasing them. It was about finding yourself. In the beginning, you were drawn to their mystery, their distance, the way they made you feel something intense and rare. But slowly, you started losing yourself in that feeling, waiting more than living, hoping more than seeing reality. And one day, you feel it clearly. Loving them is costing you your peace. That's when everything shifts. You stop asking if they love you or if they'll come back, and start asking something deeper. Is this healthy for me? And that question changes everything. Because now you see the truth. Being destined doesn't always mean being together. Sometimes it means meeting someone who changes you, exposes your wounds, and teaches you to choose yourself. From here, two paths open. Either they feel your change, step up, and meet you with real effort and emotional presence, and the connection becomes calm, stable, and mutual. Or they stay the same. And this time, you don't chase. You let go, not out of pain, but out of self-respect. You stop waiting, stop hoping, and finally choose yourself. And that's the real truth. The moment you let go is the moment you take your power back. Because in the end, this was never just about them. It was about becoming the version of you who no longer settles for less than real love.